Today is Thursday, June 7th, and I'm your host, Paula Hersey. On today's show, we find out what's on the agenda for Town Council tonight, and we do a deep dive with the town manager on the process of hiring a new police chief. First, a look at today's weather. Finally, the gray, gloomy pattern is offshore. There could be some morning clouds and fog, but sunshine should take hold relatively quickly, leading to a nice day overall. Milder, highs 65 to 70. Let's start with some news you can use. After lengthy public comment and discussion at last night's school committee meeting, a motion by Vice Chair Stephanie Ellis was made and the school committee decided not to renew the charter of the Barnstable Community Horace Mann Charter Public School. Barnstable residents, become involved in your town's government. Apply for a position on a board, committee, or commission. The town of Barnstable has over 40 boards, committees, and commissions with approximately 291 seats. Our citizen participation is exemplary, and the Town Council appreciates each and every member who serves. If you are a resident of Barnstable and are interested, please consider submitting an application. The Appointments Committee, made up of 5 town councilors, will interview applicants and make recommendations to the Town Council, who vote to appoint members at their regular meetings. Find all the boards, committees, and commissions on our website, www.townofbarnstable.us. Another packed agenda for the Town Council tonight. On the phone with us, Eric Steinhilber, Town Council President. On the phone with me today is Town Council President Eric Steinhilber. Eric, how are you today?
Great, thanks for having me.
Large agenda in paper-wise, but not so much on actual things that need to be done this evening. But we do have the police chief and the police department budget. Why don't we start with that?
Absolutely, yeah. We're happy to see the appointment by the town manager of Deputy Chief Matt Sonnabend as our new police chief. So the council will take that up to confirm that tonight. I think he'll do an excellent job, and he's obviously been in a leadership role as deputy chief for some time now, and I think he's going to do an excellent job. So we're looking forward to making that official. And then we do have operational budget items that we'll finish up tonight, and that will end the fiscal year 2019 operating budget. One of the larger items is the police department. We'll probably take that item up first when we get to budget items. And some of the other items we have are town insurance, assessment costs, employee benefits. We have libraries, the town manager budget, the town council budget, administrative services. So some housekeeping type operational budgets, and our Director of Finance, Mark Milne, will be the one presenting these items as we finish out our fiscal 19 operating budget.
And that will be it for budgets. It's been a long couple of months for you folks.
Yeah, we went well. We're happy to get some projects started, and then we'll begin the process for the next budget cycle, which basically starts us back up again in September. And the council actually this year has a workshop in September for a strategic plan. We do that every 2 years, and that kind of sets the priorities for the town, and then the town manager and his staff, build the budget off of those priorities that are set by the council.
Right. Also some conservation restrictions I see on the agenda items.
Yep, we have a conservation restriction going in Marston's Mills for a 2+ acre parcel, and also in Katuitt, which I believe is a 4-acre parcel. Some other items we have some appointments and reappointments to board, committees, and commissions. June is always is heavy in that regard, because all the terms, the ones that the folks that are up for their terms are expiring. We're either considering a reappointment or considering new members to join come July 1. It's always a busy time for committees. We also have a few grants we're going to be looking at, traffic enforcement grant, pedestrian bicycle safety grant. We'll be taking those up. Those are basically acceptance of the grants so that they can go to good use. And then we're starting to take up, these will be first reads, but the Appointments Committee has been looking at our entire committee structure, which we have 43 volunteer boards, committees, and commissions, and it's a big number, and it's become a bit unruly. We haven't really looked at it for some time now. So kind of taking a full inventory of all the committees, seeing what may be combined, what might be dissolved and kind of recreated in another fashion, or perhaps have a function rolled into another committee. There might be some committees that were lower the membership because they're having problems with quorum. So really just trying to streamline things. There's also a lot of committees that were created years ago, but now you might have a town department or you might have town staff that works on that item where you didn't have that at all when the committee was formed. So really trying to streamline these, make them as effective as possible. And that is an ongoing effort, and this will be the first kind of phase of items for the council to consider tonight, and we'll be seeing more of that as we roll into the summer, I would expect, as well.
All right. And then you've got some first reads as well.
Yeah, a couple of the big first reads are, where obviously all the communities in Massachusetts are kind of doing their due diligence on whether or not they want to have non-medical marijuana or retail businesses in their town or city. So we had a workshop back in March on that item, and we have a ban that's coming forward for first read, which is coming forward from the leadership, and really that's just out of respect for that the town voted no back in 2016, so we felt that was important to give voice to that. And then there's also a group of councilors sponsoring a item which would set aside some districts in town where it would be allowed. So those are first reads. They'll go to the planning board, and we'll have their advisory opinion on that, and we'll move forward on that. I wouldn't expect to really be taking that up until probably the end of the summer. Yeah. And right now we're under a moratorium for anything until December of this year.
Correct. Yes, that was mentioned. We did an interview with Britt Bender a couple of weeks ago. So busy evening for you guys, the beginning of the summer, so take a few weeks off to catch your breath from operating budgets and the budget season, and we'll check with you in another 2 weeks.
Yeah, a couple things that people might want to keep in mind for the summer. We do have one more meeting in June, which tends to be kind of a wrap-up of this fiscal year type housekeeping meeting. And then in July and August, we'll be scheduling workshops around our dredging program, and also we're going to do a budget workshop where really kind of digs into 2.5, tax increase that all communities do, or we always operate under Prop 2.5. But what if taxes just went up 2%? How would that affect services and expectations within the town? So that's something we haven't done that I can recall, but that's something that the council is going to do this summer. So there's a couple of things that workshop type items that people might want to keep in mind to stay tuned this summer.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for taking busy time out of your day, Eric, to speak with us, and I hope it's a short evening for you.
All right. Thank you very much. Take care.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye.
A long process through civil service has produced a new chief of police for the town of Barnstable. Town manager Mark Ells and I take a deep dive into the process of choosing a new police chief and also catch up on some trash talk. Two great topics today for town manager Mark Ells. One is it's a plastic-free world that we're living in, and two, the process of picking a police chief. Welcome, Mark.
Thanks for having me.
So let's start with today is Plastic-Free Day. How are you going plastic-free?
Trying not to buy products that contain plastic. Avoidance, because if you've been reading the papers lately, there is no market for recycling right now. Basically products that right now I think corrugated cardboard, some newsprint if it's clean, metal cans, if you strip off the paper and all can go in the metal pile, there's still a market for that. The rest of it, there is no market for it. It's not like if you pay more you can still recycle. There is no market. And our users of our facilities are having a hard time with that one a little bit, meaning they're like, well, what do you mean there is no market for it? It means it's not being recycled. So my guess is it's probably getting thrown away either into a waste energy facility or a landfill somewhere, and we got to make sure we're not paying a premium to call it recycling when in fact all they're doing is throwing this stuff away.
Throwing it away,
yeah.
yeah.
So, I mean, to me, the tactic you take during a down market with recycling is you watch the market, you try to separate to the best of your ability for a clean product that does have a market, and then you work with your residents and your users of your facility to manage the waste stream reduction. So when you ask about plastics, try not to buy as much plastic because ultimately once you've used it, you get rid of it.
Right.
And where does it go? So like plastic bottles from water, right now people think, oh yeah, well it's going to be recycled. No, it isn't. It's getting, whether you throw it in the recycling pile or you throw it in the trash bin, it's all going to the trash and it's getting, because there's no market for it. There's nothing to do with it after you get rid of it.
Right.
So, and we've seen this before, I've said it on your shows.
Yep.
But this is a little different because we had a lot of our markets were overseas. You know, the predictions in the marketplace are saying that the market has changed. So now not only do we have to wait for, you know, the market to reemerge and be used in some form, meaning the products you put in, but we also have to start to think, okay, if it doesn't come back the same way, then what?
Right.
Then what? Like for glass, we're looking at, you know, what we might do there, and there are other options. We just have to, you know, think about, right now maybe they're not cost effective, but when we start to compare it to you know, what the market will bear for either throwing away or calling it recycling when it's not, and paying a premium so we can call it recycling, you know, some of these other markets may emerge.
Right.
So.
And the innovation of some of those markets, you know, they're using glass and asphalt now, and
Yes.
some of the different rubbers out there are being made into different products. But it ultimately comes down to not buying products that are overly packaged.
Absolutely.
And that's something that we all have to be conscious of. You know, it's skip the straw. Everybody who I'm coming in contact with now puts a straw in my water or my soft drink at a restaurant. I'm telling them skip the straw, and I tell them why.
Right.
So let's just stop using it.
Right. And it becomes a big part of it's educating the consumer, and then the consumer has to want to modify behavior as far as how they purchase. They make purchasing decisions, and you know, long term, that's a pretty sustainable approach. Meaning, well, I don't buy stuff like that anymore because there's no need for it. It's not like functional. It's just for, you know, for packaging purpose, shipping purposes, communication purposes. Much of the packaging we have is relevant to being able to say who it is or put some bit of information on there, and really don't need that. There are other means of knowing, you know, what's there. So what's there in that particular product, but yeah, it's also a matter of what the consumer will accept. And education's the best way to get them to start thinking about this. So.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Second big piece this week, I want to do a little bit of a deep dive. Thursday night, the new chief recommendation will go to town council.
Yes.
Barring any unforeseen craziness that goes on at that meeting, there should be a swearing in on Friday.
Correct.
Of the new chief. And I think our residents would really like to understand the process. It seemed inordinately long to get a new chief recommendation in place. But there's so many steps to that, starting with an assessment that really there's not a lot of control over.
Correct. As we entered into this process at the end of last calendar year, we were notified by the state that our police chief position was in civil service. Prior to that, at the last hiring, that was not a civil service hire, and that was challenged at that time. And basically, you know, my take on it is, because we weren't going back into that process again, there wasn't a final decision made, but then as we entered, actually the day before we entered into the process, I received the letter from the commissioner who oversees administration and finance, under which human resources, under which civil service falls, and it basically said your chief's position is in civil service, so you need to follow that process. So what happened from there is it goes in, we retained a consultant as per the civil service process. We conducted assessment centers on all the applicants, and the people who could apply when you go through this process are both 2 grades below. So in the case of an internal search with a chief departing, you would look at deputies and lieutenants in our case. And so any and all were invited to apply. They applied. We went to an assessment center. The assessment center, I did not participate in the assessment center, though they did speak with us. The consultant that we retained did speak with us about the position, the job description, the priorities as identified by our community, and primarily the point of information, or the priority that we went to was to look at our budget documents, our strategic plan, what we heard, what we knew of our community, and where the priorities fell. Went through that process. I believe there were 4 former chiefs, a personnel person and an administrative person involved in that from the outside. They conducted it. They come back to you with a ranking of all the candidates. I did not get that, the details of any of that. That's not something that I receive. What they do give me is a ranking of all the candidates that applied. There were 6, and then the top 3. And in our case, there were 2 for number 1 and a 3. And so basically you begin a process of reviewing those 3 candidates in the order that they're given to you. And if you don't take the number 1, you have to have justification as to why you bypassed the number 1 for a number 2 or a number 3. And this is what created the time after the assessments from February when that ended. And I got my notice, I forget, we can look back and have Bill Cole tell us the official date that I received the notice that the 3 individuals that the assessment center identified had said back to the civil service that they wanted to proceed. And then they give me that list of those 3 who want to proceed. Coming to this Thursday evening. Yep. So we conducted we asked for our community to come in to help us go through, and we tried to pick a broad group of people representing our community to help us in the event that we didn't go with the number 1 candidate and we wanted to choose a bypass for legitimate reasons.
So that's the citizens panel.
Yeah, that was the citizens panel.
Right.
Our questions that we formulated, both for the citizens, though they were able to ask their own, it was kind of a combination approach, and then in a latter interview, looked at the citizen survey we did, because we wanted to make sure that what our budget documents and our strategic plan identify as priorities are in line with what our citizens are saying to us about the role of the police chief. And there were no surprises there. We ultimately put all that online for people to look at. And there were some great suggestions too about enhancing communications and presence in the community, and those were all taken into consideration as we went forward. And so we gathered information from a citizen survey. We conducted interviews with a community panel, and then I had individual interviews with each of the top 3 candidates. And then I looked at the ranking from civil service and the criteria to consider the number 1 candidate, in our case, number 1 candidates, or the number 3 candidate, and what would be involved in that selection process. And I ultimately came forward with the recommendation that's before town council at this point.
So that whole process, 4 months long,
Yep.
we're now coming up to the end of that. So it goes before town council. How does town council handle that now? They take that recommendation, and they just need to vote on that.
They just ratify the appointment.
Ratify the appointment.
Yes, and we do
Excellent.
that with all, this is really a director level position
Okay.
with an added layer of civil service. No
Right.
other position
Okay.
that I hire is in civil service.
Okay.
It's just the police department, and quite honestly, it is from, you know, the ground up. Everybody in the police department, all uniformed officers, are in civil service
Okay.
now. Prior to that, it was everybody but the chief's position. Prior to the last chief, all were in. So originally it was all, when the chief, prior to Chief McDonald was hired, that was civil service. In that case, they didn't do it internally, they went out.
Okay.
So sitting chiefs and whatever the next level down in each department, it might be called something different, but in ours it's a deputy chief. So sitting chiefs and deputy chiefs could have put in if I went external. Internal is the next two lowest, so it's deputy chief and lieutenant. So put us back in and went through that process, and here we are. This is a ratification by town council. Once ratified, the chief will be sworn in and commence, and then the chief will, in vacating the deputy chief position, go through not
same-
an unsimilar process to retain the deputy.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's lots of moving parts as he takes that position,
Yes.
and people move up through
Yes.
the ranks within
Yes.
that. Excellent. Well, I think that
Hopefully
was.
it won't take 4 months.
Hopefully it won't take 4
And
months.
you know, and I apologize to each of the candidates that it did take time. It's a big selection process.
Right.
It's a process that in the prior hire, at least, they didn't have to follow relevant to civil service. So we wanted to make sure, and it was a very process-oriented, step-by-step, that we went through to make sure that every area was covered, and have come to the recommendation that we have. And I'm very pleased
Right.
to bring, you know, our sitting deputy chief, Matt Sonnenben, forward to be our next police chief.
I enjoy talking to him every Tuesday morning, so I'll just have to remember to call him Chief next week.
That's right. That's right.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Mark. I appreciate the updates.
Thanks for talking with me about it.
Here's a look at the community calendar. A film and discussion, Living While Dying, is at Cotuit Library on June 8th, 2 to 4 p.m. Death kept showing up, says filmmaker Kathy Zulin, so I picked up a camera to document my friends with terminal illnesses and sought the advice of a death walker and Aboriginal elder in Australia. Now death prompts my conversations with my beloved 91-year-old mom regarding her wishes at the end of life. The film, Living While Dying, is a wholehearted look at the vulnerability and courage as baby boomers reclaim conscious dying. Join filmmaker Kathy Zulin for the afternoon for a 45-minute documentary film screening a personal journey alongside 4 of her friends with terminal illnesses, followed by a candid conversation about facing our mortality. This program is free, but please register at cotuitlibrary.org/events or contact the library. Town Council meets this evening at 7 p.m. in Town Hall in the hearing room. I'm Paula Hersey, and thank you for watching Barnstable Today.